The word acceptance comes from the Latin accipiere, meaning to receive what we are given and or are offered. Accepting reality means that we are accepting things as they actually are. We're trying to avoid twisting our reality or judging things in ways that can make us feel worse, letting our emotions run wild. We then try to develop ways to be with the emotional pain to reduce suffering. We want to respond to it, not react to it. Hi guys, welcome to the Accepting Reality part of Emotional First Aid. Though some of the emotional first aid skills we'll be learning are largely based around actively doing things in crisis, such as distraction or soothing or improving the moment, the accepting reality portion is much more focused on the inner monologue and the inner workings of what's going on to make a different approach apparent to you. Both of these skill sets are difficult to do at times. They can make it painful, but it can make it better when you're implementing them instead of working with your current work-throughs. They will overlap, but that's up to you how you overlap them personally and what you take from them. The first thing we need to do when we're accepting reality is to realise that distress cannot be avoided. It can hit us whenever it wants, and it will affect all of us in very different ways. Our responses and our pain towards things are understandable, but we can deepen our suffering if we sit with them for too long or if we brood on them for too long. For example, if you're feeling really depressed in the morning and you sit there and think about how depressed you are, how you don't want to wake up and deal with the depression, and how you have to see people and you don't want them to see you depressed, it starts increasing the feelings of depression by putting in feelings of guilt, feeling lost, feeling like it's a mask all the time. So we're going to deal with that in this course. There's a quote, and I'm not sure if it's attributed to anyone, so I apologise if it is, but being in pain is bad enough, but being pained by being in pain is even worse. Quite simply put, it means that pain and not accepting that it's happening makes your suffering worse. But pain and acceptance means that it's still going to hurt to a certain extent, but you're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The arrow metaphor. This was a metaphor we was taught whilst in class, and it just helps you to understand why we're choosing to accept reality. And it goes as thus. If a person is struck by an arrow, is it painful? It is. If this person then fires a second arrow into themselves, is that even more painful? It is. Of course. You can create your own metaphor if you like. My personal one for myself is I think about leg waxing, which sounds a little bit crazy, but just go with me. But if you're having your legs waxed at a salon, is it painful? Yeah, it is. But that person's waxing you. It's happening to you. If you try to wax your own legs, is it painful? Oh, yes. It's more painful. The reason for this is you're going to move it slower. You're doing it to yourself. And it takes a lot longer. And if you're not trained in it and you don't really know what you're doing and you don't know how you're dealing with it, it's going to leave you with long-lasting consequences. And I think that applies to the arrow metaphor as well. If you're inflicting your own arrow, your own waxing, your own whatever it is you want to put in there on yourself, it's going to be even more painful because it's going to be marred with guilt, with sadness, with anger, with desperation, with anxiety. So clearly we don't want to be shoving another arrow in ourselves. We don't want to be hurting ourselves any more than we're already being hurt. But why exactly is acceptance necessary? Well, to accept means that we're avoiding unnecessary emotional pain that we're going to add to the unpleasantness of the situation itself. When we accept things, we learn how to consider the order that they're coming in and how to respond to them. It helps us create a starting point to change our reactions. It can also help us lead to self-acceptance and awareness. So what might help us cultivate this acceptance? Quite simply, a decision from deep within to tolerate and accept our pain. We need to say right now that we're going to make efforts to accept the pain that we are in. This is making a commitment to ourselves to accept this. And that we're not going to continue to reject reality. Meaning that we're not going to grab hold of something and let our brains run away with it and create a fantastical tale of fear, of anger, of sadness for us to make us feel worse with. We don't want that second arrow happening. We're going to try and cultivate a kinder attitude towards life is as it is, and we ourselves are ourselves. And that's a thing that we need to carry with us, as well as something we need to be able to adopt within the moment of despair or crisis or whatever you'd like to fixate the word to. It's a way of stepping into our mind consciously and saying, okay, stop, put the brakes on. Literally, that old adage, what we were always taught as children, is stop and count to 10. However, acceptance is not about saying distressing things are okay. And that's not about passively doing nothing. You cannot avoid the distressing situation and expect it to be gone. Same way, you cannot just say that something that is distressing is okay. Because it's not. No one wants anyone to be in pain. It's not okay, but it happens. Let's deal with it. Okay, so now the work. We have 6 bullet points that help us work towards acceptance. And these bullet points are just a run through of what to do each time you face a distressing situation. So, number 1, you open yourself to the experience. Number 2, you observe what is happening, noticing thoughts and feelings throughout your body. Number 3, you own the outcome. Number 4, you let go of any unhelpful judgment or criticism of self or others. 5, you recognise the train of events. And 6, you reflect on how you want to respond. So let's discuss this further. Opening yourself to the experience. Opening yourself to the experience means that you're not going to reject or hide from the reality of the experience. It means making room for what is happening without actually reacting to it. For example, if you're feeling an innate sense of anger at a situation, something has really provoked you and made you fume, instead of blindly shouting out and reacting in an angry way, take a step back, stop, count to 10. Think, right now I'm having a sensation of anger. Noting that you feel angry to yourself helps you become aware of the anger. Because when you're angry, you are not aware that you're angry until after the fact. Sounds weird, right? Any emotion that you're feeling, you don't often feel the peak of it until afterwards when you're looking back on it in hindsight. Because emotion is very much a reaction that is immediate and is happening there and then. And we want you to open yourself up to look at yourself and say, I know what is happening. I know I'm angry, but I need to know that this is a starting point where I need to go, I need to act better at this and not blindly reject what's happening and let the emotion take over. So, observation. Observation can come in two parts and they can be combined. Observation can start with you thinking about things that are around you. Now, we've heard of these things where you count 5 things you can see, 4 things you can smell, 3 things you can touch. It's a very helpful way to disengage your brain from the emotion and center yourself within the moment. Again, it's that stopping and taking a few seconds. And it can happen in a few seconds. It's amazingly quick how that happens. I personally find that quite difficult when I'm dealing with anxiety and full-on panic. So I find it better to do a body scan. I will be putting a body scan in another video where it's just a body scan in case you want a guided scan to help you learn how to do it, feel a bit more comfortable with how you're doing it. And a body scan is literally taking stock of yourself and sitting there thinking, well, I can feel my anger, I can feel my heart racing, I can feel my fingertips tingling. Whatever it is you're observing within yourself, you're noting it to yourself in a very matter-of-fact way. Don't put any words to it that are going to describe how you're feeling, like, I'm feeling very anxious and frightened and it's terrible. You just say to yourself, I'm feeling frightened. My heart is racing. My lungs are making me breathe very fast. By doing it that way, you're actually reducing the legitimacy that the emotions are trying to hype up within yourself and your body. And it helps you just to take stock and rationalise what your brain is trying to tell you. And that moves us quite swiftly on to owning the outcome. Owning the outcome very much links with the second bullet point in this, where you have to admit what is happening. So one of the really, really, really important ones that I like is that I can only respond to what is happening right now. This is stopping my brain from thinking about what has happened before, what's going to happen in the future, what could happen right now if someone else did something differently. I need to concentrate on what's happening right now as it is, with no other influences, almost as if it's never happened before. Some of the encouraging statements that are used within the course that people have found really helpful are, it's pointless fighting what's happened. I can only respond to what's really happening now. I can work towards acceptance. I may not be responsible for what's happened, but I am responsible for how I respond to it. And when it comes to owning your outcomes, it brings us to letting go of the judgment and being more mindful. Because when you say that you're trying to deal with things in your own way, you will notice that you will start to judge yourself. You will feel selfish. Perhaps other people will say you're being selfish as they're not used to this pattern of behaviour from you. But you're not. You're just taking control of the situation as it is. So notice the judgments that are coming into you. Ask what this judgment wants. What is this judgment requiring from you? If it seems that it's trying to make you feel guilty, question that. Why do I need to feel guilty for this action? Accept that you have judgments that come in. Our brain will judge everything. There's a saying, don't judge a book by its cover, but we all judge a book by its cover. It's about not letting that judgment last on you. The way we do this is by saying, okay, I've judged this. I feel a bit scared of that person walking up the road to me. But I'm not going to judge that person by it. I'm going to let it go. And that is what you need to do with your own mind. Don't get caught up in the arrogance of words that pretend to be facts. Your brain becomes the most loquacious, Shakespearean fiend in the whole wide world when it wants to be cruel to you. It throws out words like you're useless, you're a failure, you're cruel, you're a coward, uncaring, stupid, imbecile, horrible, evil. When you start attributing these words and personalising these emotions, it makes them stronger. All your brain needs to know is that this is what you're feeling. Sit and let it go. So recognising the train of events. Recognising train of events is something that links to the rest but can be done a little bit later while you're practicing the other 4 points before. It's also a very, very good hindsight module to do. And it basically means that you're looking at the event, at how it occurred, and taking into account all the billions of choices that other people have made, as well as yourself, and all the billions of natural occurrences that have occurred to create this event exactly as it is now. These things also influence the environment that we're in, as well as our responses. And every second, a new outcome is being created. You see this all the time in time travelling shows and things like that. Whole don't step on a butterfly, it'll change the course of history. I wouldn't be quite that extreme, but I do think that we have to realise that things happen because of everything that's happened around it. And that's really important to figure out. So you kind of have to start from the beginning and think of how you got there in this situation and how everything else got there. Again, it's very difficult to do that within the situation at the time, and much better to do in hindsight. You can do this mentally. You can do it by drawing, by writing, whatever is your process to deal with it. That's fine. But it's just figuring out that you are just a small part in this big machine. And this brings us to the final bullet point: reflect on different outcomes. This is very much a hindsight task that you do by reflecting on things that happened either just recently, moments ago, or even things in the past that are still difficult. You can even start it with something that you found difficult at the time but no longer do. Great questions to ask are: do I want to repeat an unhelpful pattern of behaviour or change it? What other responses might be open to me? What responses would best fit my values and goals? And what would help me to take a different approach? So this is where I'm going to give you some tasks, and I do love my tasks. So one of the tasks you can do is to spend short periods of time just watching your thoughts and feelings. This comes under the form of meditation or body scans. If you don't want to attribute those titles to it, that's fine. Just sit and think, okay, what is my body feeling? And it could be emotional. I feel tightness in my chest, a feeling of despair, to I can feel my bottom cushioned on this seat. Just noting them all down, acknowledging them and letting them go on. Read a news story, a magazine story, watch the TV news or the TV magazine shows. Try not to get caught up in judgment. Ensure that you're not choosing something that's incredibly upsetting or triggering. That's not going to help you. That's just going to stress you out. It stresses everybody out. But try to sit there and think about what's happening, what's being told to you. Something that's being shown in quite a biased way, usually as well. And work through how you're going to use your acceptance skills on this. Try to figure out what they're telling you, why that judgment is there, whether it applies to you to think that way. Work through your skills, ask the questions, and you'll end up with a nice little essay. This can be written, this can be done in your head, this can be done with friends and have a chat and talk it out. However you feel better dissecting it, go for it. This is your mental health, this is your recovery, these are your skills. You do what works for you. A really, really good worksheet that I used in regards to working out how I was going to apply actively my accepting skills was to do an ABCD chart. And it goes as thus. A, activate an event, the trigger. This is the first arrow. This is what's happened. This is the life thing that's happened to cause you distress. The event at its core. B, beliefs. This is your beliefs in the situation. This is your thoughts, your feelings, your emotional ties, why it's affecting you, what you think is going to happen in the past, present, future of this event. C, consequences. This is detailing how your behaviour pattern has affected you, has affected the situation, has affected those around you. D, dispute. This is how you're going to argue against what you did. You're going to look at the consequences that were caused and see why that was not beneficial for you in the long run. Just because it's been working up to now in a detrimental way but still worked doesn't mean that it's right for you or anybody else. So it's a really good way of doing that, and I've put little bits in, as you can see, just to show you how I would do that. You can do these in your head if you wish. I personally find it better to write it down because it's actively taking it out of my mind somewhere else. I mean, if you're feeling really brave, you can do it with other people and discuss it in a classroom or a board meeting and do those ice-breaking things and do it on a very small level. Whatever works for you, to however personal or impersonal you want to keep it, that's fine. But honestly, give it a go. Let me know how you get on. It really, really does help. So that's it for cultivating acceptance. Hopefully there were some tips and tricks there for you to try out, and hopefully you understand what it is that you need to do to cultivate these, not behavioural patterns, but thought patterns at the very least. I hopefully will see you next week to do cultivating willingness, and I hope you keep smiling. Enjoy the slightly, dismal weather out here in the UK, and I'll see you soon. Bye!